Sleuth.
I am the eyes and ears of this institution.
Mama don't like tattletales.
Who knows? In 1,000 years, even you may be worth something.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Room for one more, honey.
Today we face the monsters that are at our door.
I think we live in overstimulated times.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm still like furiously trying to add photos to the stage. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. The chat is cruising along. Let me check it out, everybody. Okay, we are on Pilled, we are on Rumble, and of course, we are on YouTube. The party is totally on Rumble, though, guys. So if you've never been on Rumble, it is a totally free platform where you don't have to like monitor what you say and you can play music. It's pretty cool. And tonight we have a lot of emotes. There's some praying. I've got Keanu Reeves as Jesus. There's people holding up signs that say Matt and Nora, and it's a good time.
Cool.
So we have moderators. So tonight we're talking about faith and we're talking about goth, and we'll get into it. But I just want to say a little disclaimer, because religion can get very polarizing, and people are really fervent in their beliefs. And I am just a young Padawan, so I am going to say things that are ignorant, possibly shocking, and possibly question all reality. And so, like, don't get nuked. You can just like email me specifically, and I am mollysleuth@gmail. Or just start something in the comment section if the live chat. We'll try to monitor. Oh, thank you. Or we'll try to monitor all of the chats that are going on. But I just I'm so excited to talk to you guys. So I will shut the fuck up for a second. Matt, let's go to you, and then we'll go to Nora because we got Nora's pictures. Maddie, I've known you 100 years. Hi,
Yep.
friend.
So I don't know. What do you want me to start with? We did that little introduction, you and I, back in the old days, a couple weeks back. In that, I mentioned that I was Catholic. Nora was watching. She's like, "Oh, Gothic Catholics,"
Yeah.
and got excited. So that's how we all, that's how we met Nora via your
Yeah.
And
Which is so crazy because we're all scattered all over the country now. And
Yeah.
yet, like, here's Nora, who like you showed me, we have all these old pictures. And I was like, ew, that's my ex-boyfriend. Like we knew the same people. And it's a guy I paid $40 to go away from me, which is kind of a fun story. So anyway, but Nora, we're going to get into your whole journey. I don't know if you want to talk while I show some of these crazy photos of you from back in the day, but they're awesome.
Just tell me where you want to start, or
Yeah, I don't know. So, okay, you grew up in LA too, or
Yeah,
at least
so, okay.
club years.
Yeah, so I grew up actually in Riverside County. And as a teenager, I just really wanted something more cool than was available out there. And so my boyfriend at the time was much older than me, and he was really into goth music and the goth scene. And so we started going to Hollywood, and he took me to the Hollywood goth clubs. And so at that point, I was just hooked, and I fell in love. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I was like underage at that time, but like nobody checked my ID. They were just like, just look cool and you're good. And I'm like, all right. So
didn't you work the door, Molly? Molly,
I
wasn't
did
that
work
your,
the door.
wasn't
Yeah,
that your job to check IDs?
I did. Hey, do you remember when Madonna was turned away from Control Factory? They were like, we don't need that shit here. Thanks. Bye. And actually, I was working the door. What was that gay bar at Circus? And it was like 14 and up. And Carrot Top comes to the door. Nora, I can't hear you.
Yeah,
You're muted.
you're
Can
muted. Wait,
Let me
Yeah,
check.
yep, I hear that. I hear that. Nope, you're good.
Did you hear me now?
Now I hear you, yeah.
Okay. It might just, maybe something's just glitching a little bit.
Yeah, do you remember that club, Circus? And so I was working the door, which was basically me going, it's $10 to go in, it's free to get the fuck out of my face, you're at a crossroads next. And like, that was me like all night. So Carrot Top comes to the door, and I've got my sign that says $10, like, right? And so I'm just like wheeling and dealing. Like, it is my job to get everybody in the door so they can get to the bar and start making money. Nobody's making the club money out in the parking lot. Get in. So Carrot Top comes to the door and he's like, hi, I'm like, then you have, and I point at the $10 sign and I made him pay $10 to get in. But then like Lindsay Lohan came to the door and it's like, right this way, my dear, because like
Oh,
people are
VIP.
going to go to that club the next 6 months looking for Lindsay Lohan. Nobody's coming next week to see if Carrot Top shows up again. Okay.
nope.
Okay,
Circus, was
so
that the one that was on Santa Monica Boulevard?
yeah, and
And
it was called,
was it like the all ages one?
yeah, 14 and up, but yeah.
Yeah.
And so what clubs did you go to? Because there were ones in Riverside.
Yeah. So there was one in Riverside that I went to, but I don't know. I mean, it was okay. It was called the Metro. And I think it was somewhere, I can't remember, maybe like Moreno Valley or Riverside, something like that. But the first Hollywood goth club I went to was Control Factory. And I think after that it was like Helter Skelter and then Coven 13. I really loved Coven 13 because I loved the El Rey Theater. It was so cool and really just looked really, glamorous, I guess, like an old Hollywood movie theater.
Yeah. Also
And-
because they had a sunken dance floor,
Yes.
which
yeah.
is so very gothic to just stand on the outside and like judge
Mhm.
everyone on the dance floor.
Or up in the balcony and look down over the division.
Oh shit, the balcony. Yeah, I didn't hang out there much. I needed the drama in my face. Okay, let's get to some of your pictures.
Okay.
And from some of these clubs in no order. Let's see. Oh, you with Chaton Damone.
Yeah. That was actually taken, I believe that was at the Ruby. I think the one on Hollywood Boulevard. They changed the name a bunch of times, or the World.
The World, 70 Hollywood, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw her. I have other pictures of her, but I got to meet her. So I was like, ooh, I felt like I was a fangirl or something, whatever you call it.
Okay. Oh, why didn't I add this one to the stage? There was one of you in a wedding dress, which was obviously like the first picture, the first outfit I ever wore to a club. Where's the wedding dress one? Oh, here we go. Because wedding dresses and the goth scene are just so hand in hand.
Yeah.
And how come I'm not seeing it? Okay, let me just remove that one. Let me show a couple others because I think I'm just like got too many on the stage.
Yeah.
Okay, you were a little spicy.
Yeah. I definitely had to go through my pictures and try to find ones that weren't too,
Oh, this is the tamed down version, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, outfits were just like that. That's kind of how just everybody dressed.
I have plenty of those. I toned my shit down because I just thought you run a classier operation. So
Yes. So that actually, I remember that night. It was at Coven 13. They had like a goth beauty contest or something. A goth girl. I don't know what
the
it was.
beauty pageant.
Do you remember what I'm talking about? It was like in 98 or something like 98. Yeah. And so I went as one of the contestants. I didn't win, but I think I was like in third place or something like that. I wasn't that cool, but I think I put together a decent look.
I think, let me see if I have this. My tech skills. Everybody comes for the tech skills is basically what this show is about. I think, was this the Goth Beauty Pageant? Summer Gothic Ball. That's me and my friend Tony. but I thought that was for the beauty pageant because Matt, we'll get into your band, but I think you played
We did you were with me on that when we did I don't know how many beauty pageants they did. They might have done it every year.
Okay.
Because when we did it, Mal, it would have been around probably 2000.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I think Coven was still at like Moguls in '98, or it had just moved.
Yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Because it did like some weird crap for a while there. It was like at Moguls, and then it went to like that real sketchy place in downtown LA, like for a little bit. It had a couple.
Downtown LA was like really shady back then. Like you just didn't go down there. And it's funny because like later on in life, I ended up living in downtown LA like in 2011 or something, and totally different. Like the arts district, it became like a cool. Okay, so those are all my club kid friends, and the one on the I don't know if you're on, but
third from the right, Julian.
I knew Julian. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I knew Julian.
Ernie,
Sort of.
Joaquin, Rocky, and there's a whole bunch of other ones there. I can't see everybody. But Russell, his club kid name was Rainbow, and so we knew each other since like he was 13 and I was like 15, and we met at the mall in Riverside, and I was like, "Oh, you're cute. What's your name?" And I was like, "Are you gay?" It was just like. And he was all, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "Well, what are you doing?" And he's like, "I ran away from my group home." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, you can come stay with me. I'm living at my grandma's house."
Oh my gosh.
So my grandma was like in the parking lot waiting for me to just mosey around the mall. And I was like, "Granny, can my friend come stay with us?" And she was like, "Yeah, I guess, but he has to do chores or something."
Oh my gosh.
So
Is that the same Julian?
Yes.
Is that the same Julian dressed like Robert Smith or whatever?
Yeah.
Had that house like in the shadow of the Capitol Records building where everyone would hang out on the porch?
Yes.
Hollywood Tower.
Yeah, Hollywood Tower. Okay, yes, the Hollywood Tower. That's what I was telling you about last time when I met Nisha. We can talk about that later. But
we have to talk about that. That's funny.
But yeah, that's where he was always hanging out there. And so that's how I kind of knew him, because he was always over there.
Okay, let's keep moving on. I'll make a little notey poo.
Yeah, so see the one in the middle? That's Shane. I know you guys know Shane.
Why does he look like a ghost?
He looks like a ghost because we were cool back then. See, I was real artsy. And we would take our cameras and then re-put the film in again and take pictures again. And so they turned into these like spliced pictures or whatever. So
that's how goth Shane is. He's
definitely we are so artistic. Definitely didn't need AI back then.
Okay, I need to talk to you about this outfit.
Okay, that was, I went to some kind of gothic rave or something like that. As you could tell, I don't look very goth. It's more cyber, and that was from the outfit Red Balls. Do you remember that store?
Oh yeah, totally. They were by Retail Slut where I worked.
On Melrose, and so they sold all the cool like club clothes and everything, club kid clothes, raver clothes. And so I bought that. I thought it was so cool.
Okay, but I wish I could zoom in on this because it looks like you're wearing a nasal cannula.
I am. Yeah. So all the guys back then always wore this little oxygen thing. It was just part of the look. So
okay. All right. We have lost our nasal cannula. Look at you, how beautiful you are.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so my goth look, I guess you could say back then, like I didn't have like the typical goth look, but there were this was kind of a look, you know, like a Betty Page kind of look.
Yeah, I did it too, for sure.
Yeah.
And then this picture totally tripped me out because I was like, ew, I know him. I paid him $40 to go home one time and never come back. That's so funny.
That is hilarious.
Yeah. And so like, what is so funny is like, we ran in the same circles. Oh, wait, let me get these things off. We ran in the same circles. Mm-hmm. And yet we kind of didn't know each other. But then when we were talking a couple weeks ago and you gave me your phone number, like I had 2 phone numbers for you from like 1982. Like, I don't know how I had your phone numbers. It's just so weird.
I think maybe, did you ever coordinate like fashion shows or events?
I did.
Okay.
I did fashion. I did direction for some fashion shows.
Okay, so I'm thinking I did modeling stuff or when, for some of those events that were going on. So I'm thinking that might have been why, but I think I knew I recognized you just from being at the door and knowing the same people and, how small the scene is. It's like there's a lot of
Yeah.
people, but it's like everybody kind of knows everybody, but some people are a little more close with others. So,
Okay, my pictures are going to be a little different. So, but yeah, it is interesting because, like, I mean, you'd think the city of Los Angeles is so big, but the scene was
it is.
so tiny. And I
Yeah.
think that was always so like problematic because it's like, well, if you dated him, I'm not going to date him. And like, there wasn't anybody left. And
It was like a drama thing. Like you'd be like, oh, you're with him now, or like, oh, he's with her now.
dude, and that was the problem with working the door because I knew where everyone had been. And it was like, I'm good, thanks. No,
Yeah,
thank
you're like,
you.
I'll pass.
Yeah. Okay, so let me see here. All right, we'll just start here. But I do want to tell the story about Naisha because I just think it's so funny that we have that in common.
The funny thing is that I met her because we were going out to clubs, and so I kind of started hanging out at her house with Julian, and she had another lady there, and it was right on Franklin. Well, you know where it is, at the Hollywood Tower.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I decided to move to Hollywood because I was still pretty young. So I got my first apartment off Melrose on Las Palmas, and I remember the studio apartment. It was like, my rent was like $425 and no parking on the street. Just find a spot.
Yeah.
That was my
for
first
sure.
place, but I was always hanging out at her house because it was cooler over there.
Yeah, and I met her at Control Factory. She threw me against a wall. It was like, you raped my boyfriend. We were going to be married. You ruined everything. And I was like, I don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I've never raped anyone, but like, who are you talking about? And it turns out it was this like dude who was in like a Depeche Mode cover band. We went on like a shitty date together. And he described his like perfect woman as having like long black hair, and I had short white hair, and I was like, okay, I guess you could take me home. And we had an awkward hug, and that was the end of that. And so for her to come up to me and be like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
And then I feel like I just told this story because we all kind of reunited a couple of weeks ago, and I told him the story. But essentially, like, he finally like came out to a club, and I just like grabbed him by the wrist and walked him up to her because she was ripping my wig off in public. This one time we were in these like pink plastic dresses, me and my friend Marissa, and she threw a full bottle of beer at my head. Like, she was just so mad at me. And like, I don't play the whole Jerry Springer thing. Like, if you were going to get married and your boyfriend is a loser, like, how is that my problem? Like, he didn't even tell me he had a girlfriend, or I would have never gone on a date with him. So I felt bad for her, and it was just always something like sticking the gum in my door handle and all this stuff. And so I gave her my phone number, and I was like, if you just like want to talk about it, like, I'm sorry for what you went through, but it doesn't have anything to do with me. Like, nothing ever happened. And then
she had a lot of drama with people.
Always.
She was always having. And then at some point I had drama with her, and then that's when we stopped being friends.
Yeah, I mean, so the odd thing of it was, I wish I had a picture of her. We looked a lot alike, but she had black hair and I had white hair, and everybody was like, oh, that's your doppelganger, which I didn't know anything about. Like, what the hell does that word mean? Yeah. And so I don't know. I always felt really bad for her because it's like me and my dumb drag queen friends like bopping around while she like led such a dark life. And I think I want to get into Naisha a little bit later when we start talking about faith, because just thinking about like humanity and like purpose and this like darkness that we have with this like Karen culture and social justice warriors, and like how we are finding purpose in such darkness now, and how a lot of people are more like towards the light and more so now. And I think I always sort of saw that in her, is that we were very different in like how we lived our life. And I understand that she's dead now and she had a lot of dark years, and I'm not here to air out anything that she was up to, but I don't know how it could have ended any other way than that. So, okay. Enough of my dominatrix stalker. Let's go back to simpler times. Okay, so it was 1974, and there I am getting baptized.
Aww.
And many, many years ago, I'm the old fat bald man. No, that's my dad. And then I was basically born on roller skates, still am. I was a relatively normal child. Relatively, I said. This is about 15 years old. We can see where this is going already.
Yeah.
And here is my senior high school photo.
I love it.
And so I kind of just like, I was really more into like the punk rock kind of a thing. Like, let's change the world, and like the political, hardcore, straight edge, and all of that stuff.
I was absolutely like that too. I was very punk when I was in high school. And that's before, colored hair and shaved heads and nose rings were acceptable.
Right.
So I just kind of was like a freak, for being so weird in high school. But I remember those little homemade zines,
Totally, yeah.
Do you remember this thing called Food Not Bombs? Do you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah. I remember that. And that guy, what's his name? He was like starting with an A. I can't remember. But he was like the one he had a band, like some kind of punk band.
Yeah, I met my first pen pal through Maximum Rock and Roll magazine, and like, dude, it was the time. But then I started to glow up and grow up, and such begins my life in the goth scene. All right, maybe that wasn't me, but this was me. And you can tell how old this picture is because of how thin those eyebrows are. So this is probably going to be 95, maybe.
Yeah.
And so basically I was the only girl in a pack of drag queens, loved those guys, and lost touch with all of them. Politics, stupidity, like everybody kind of moved on. I grew up, I got a real job and all that stuff. Hey, Maddie, this is the picture that I think you were talking about the other day when we were sharing some
with
pictures.
Claudia. Yeah, Claudia, that's the one I got.
Yeah,
it was like Christmas. We were going out for Christmas or something.
Yes, and so this is when I was living on Melrose, and I met Maddie, and we did a lot of clubs together, and had a fantastic time, if I do say so myself. And then at the same time, I was doing a lot of modeling and acting and more modeling. Matt, you took this picture of me. Yeah. Where, Matt, where was this picture?
I don't know. I think it was like somewhere, like we snuck into some chapel somewhere. I feel like
it was in Pasadena.
That's what I was going. I'm trying to think. I was going to say Sacramento, but that's not what. Yeah, I think it was in Pasadena too. Like where there's like some kind of Pasadena like government building or something weird down there that we were taking pictures because you were switching outfits in the car and stuff, and then I don't know, maybe we knew that chapel was there or something, but it was kind of funny because there's a whole series of them.
And dude, it was empty. Nobody was freaking in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was sort of my youth, just like modeling during the day, clubs at night, just being kind of a hellion. And so I guess for me, like it was like I liked the goth thing because it was very different than punk rock. It didn't have any purpose to it. It was just very, kind of ridiculous and just, photos of whatever.
I think it was like very theatrical.
Yeah, very theatrical. And so from my punk days, I decided to get my life together. Not really. On a dare, I put in a job application for the Los Angeles Police Department. And somehow they hired me. So I went from one to the other. And I guess for me, like, these really are the same person. Like, I really am still that 15-year-old kid with the bowl cut. Like, that, I just haven't changed. But obviously, you can change your wrapping, and I have. What?
You look so innocent.
Yeah, well, I was undercover for a year,
Uh-huh.
and I worked hardcore gangs. I taught interview and interrogation tactics, lie detection, and body language for the department. I
Wow.
made detective. I worked a lot of crimes. I've done a lot of stuff, and I left there as a major assault crimes detective. Oh, here's a picture back in my patrol days. That was me and my partner, Prack. And I wish, like, if I could just give any advice to any human being, whether you're 8 or 80, and hopefully you're not 8 because I have a potty mouth, and tell your parents that you shouldn't be watching it. But like, take more pictures. I worked for LAPD over a decade, and I just only have a handful of shitty, blurry photos. And I wish I had more. It was the best job I've ever had in my whole life. And I miss those days, and I wish I had more mementos from it.
That's so cool.
This was when I made detective, and I got to work with these superstars. They were just so great. And when you get to work with seasoned detectives that are showing you about, search warrants and interrogation and all of that stuff, like, it just was, it was just the best
What
job
year
I
was
ever
that?
had. Let's see. I made detective in 2016, I guess. And then I did another couple more years. And left there, and I was just sick of crime. So, like, the city of Los Angeles had just become like an absolute hellhole with crime. And it's like all day I would spend my time trying to help victims of crime. And like, you're never whole, whether you get physically assaulted or you just get your car window broken. Nobody's ever going to pay you back for that window, that time you had to take off work to go testify. On this date and time, I left my car locked and secured. At this date and time, I returned to find my window broken and my pack of menthols missing. I made a report, and I don't know this person. They didn't have permission to get in my car. Like, you're never whole. And just also seeing behind the velvet curtain of like how humanity sort of works. And you've seen young pictures of me. It's not like I grew up squeaky clean and like, I love the police, but I've always loved people, like all different kinds of people. And I just wanted to save the world. It was still part of that whole punk rock nature to just like get in there and fix the world. But unfortunately, like, off duty, like, my life was shit. Like, you're running for your life. I had to jump over a balcony onto the cement set of stairs, and I couldn't walk for a couple of days. And like, it's just like constant. And it's like, could I have like pulled my gun out and shot them? Like, legally, yes, I would have been justified. But like, you also just don't want to be a part of any of that. Like, it's just, it's so awful.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh, I didn't. It was like the greatest. Like, throwing a cup of coffee out the window at 80 miles an hour going down Sepulveda, just like, yeah, I can't believe we're being paid to do this. Go, like, yeah.
But no, seriously though, that's so cool. Like, I would always admire people that do that, just because it's like you're putting your life on the line every time you go to work. And
sometimes it's just a job, and so then, long story short, I loved my job, and I just thought I'll do it someplace safer. Like, I only had just over 10 years on the job. And so I just thought, well, I'll go do it in a place where I can actually afford a house, where people are normal, where taxes aren't insane, where politics aren't crazy, and where my life isn't in jeopardy every freaking day. I had like my car broken 6 times in 1 year. I was sick of being chased to my car, chased from my car. Like, there's just a hive of scum and villainy. Yeah, I lived in Korea.
I never had to deal with that much craziness. Like, I lived in West Hollywood part of the time, but then right before I left LA, I was living in downtown LA, and then I lived near Koreatown, like on Wilshire, and I lived there, and I was just so over living there. I was like, oh, I want to leave. It's almost like when you live in LA, it's almost hard to get out of there. You think for some people it's probably easy, but it's like, I was kind of like, well, my career, because I was a makeup artist, And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? Like, go be a makeup artist in some small town? Like, I
Yeah.
don't really have that option, you know? So,
Yeah.
but eventually I just said, forget it. I'm done with this place and I'll figure something else out.
I do think that we are slowly cooked frogs. It's just a little hotter every day. And my best friend, Randy, still lives in the LA area. And I just feel like I want him out so bad. And I think he just doesn't see anything else besides like sitting in traffic and getting his car window broken. And that just breaks my heart. So now I'm in the Midwest. It's a long story. I've done shows on it. I worked for another police department here. Hated them, did not ever understand why good people would fear and distrust police until I worked for this police department. And I quit while I was still on probation. They didn't like me either. It was a whole thing. And then I couldn't get a job. Like they were just like blackballing me. And so I got the only job that didn't care that the police hated me, and that was the fire department. So now I'm a hose dragger. And so that's a long story. Here was me last night. I'm on the front of the hose last night. And then Matt gave me a picture of me from this weekend that will happen, I'm sure. There we go. And yeah. So, but yeah. So, I want to get into everybody's like, oops, sorry, remove all this stuff. Okay, we might as well just transition into Maddie's pictures because I've got some on the stage. And Matt, you're an a-hole and you didn't send me anything. So it's just pictures I have of you. So
I think it did manifest themselves on your computer somehow.
Matt Reiser, here is your life.
I feel like we just showed my life. Oh, that girl's pretty. I feel like we just showed my life. You know, we talked about it, but you know, keep them coming. Let's see.
Okay, all right. Here is you and I believe this is the photo that you killed whales with to put me in a fire truck.
Yeah.
And then since Arizona, you had a band and a dream called Fear Cult. And this was one iteration of many of the lineups of Fear Cult. And oh, that's funny. It says, give the man this look. No, that's because I
never let people take my picture. Go ahead.
No. See, no, because I was doing AI and I was making this one and we toned it down because Nora didn't want to be a fetish nun beating me. So just
I turned into quite the prude. You'd be
one of the
Nora,
many whales.
That's what confession's for.
Right.
Still learning.
I told it to give a goth guy with long black hair, and it gave kind of this like Ozzy Osbourne thing. And so then I said, give the guy this look. And then, I mean, listen, it's smarter than I am.
Yeah, I know. Look at my legs.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that one.
Okay, so I got a few more pictures of you. And so that's where we met in, let's see, I've got an old picture of you that I love. Because this is totally us, like eating and being stupid.
Is that at Del Taco or Jack in the Box?
Jack in the Box.
Those tacos were it.
And I feel like we shared.
Yeah, we shared this one.
We shared a lot of pictures from back in the club days, but let's talk about this one.
That's when I became Catholic.
And this would be a good transition, unless I've got any that absolutely have to be shared. No, not really. So let's jump off from this picture with you.
So that I think that was 2017. So for me, like I don't, we'll get into Nora's like little journey, but for me it was I was raised Presbyterian. And a lot of you in the audience out there possibly were raised Protestant. You'll realize that Catholics aren't viewed upon very highly. And there's a lot of misconceptions on what goes on in the Catholic Church. But I'd always was sort of drawn to it. I already had the crucifix, obviously, from that picture. Like, I have a 7-foot crucifix on the wall before I became Catholic. Like, we bought from like a prop warehouse in like New York, you know, like I have statues in the house and stuff. So we had all this like weird, you know, I always was drawn to the Catholic aesthetic. Didn't really give it a whole heck of a lot of thought. You know, like I said, I was raised Presbyterian. I was pretty active in church all the way up until the time I left Arizona. And then, you know, once I got out to California, it's hard to like get, you know, you get to that stage in your life where you don't really know what to do with yourself. And I sort of stayed in that stage for a long time. And then when I had gotten somebody had said to me one time when I was working this portrait job, and this was with my first marriage, and he's like, oh, you gotta, you know, I told him I had gotten married in Vegas, and he's like, oh, you gotta get it blessed by, you know, by God. And he kind of said it like, oh no, you gotta change your oil in your car. You know, it was almost like this like matter of fact, like, no, you have to do that's something you got to do if you want it to last. You know, type of like advice or whatever. And it just like kind of like stuck with me. I'm like, yeah, well, I don't see like that happening. And of course, that marriage didn't work out. Luckily, it wasn't blessed, and it was like a Vegas wedding, and it was kind of, you know, according to the church, sort of a sham. So I was able to like get married proper. So when Autumn and I got engaged and decided we wanted to get married, she definitely did not want to have a courtroom wedding. And you know, so we're like, well, where would you want to get married? She didn't really want to get married in the US. We were looking at Italy. And in order to get married in Italy, you had to be Catholic. So, you know, I'm like, well, I already got the stuff, you know. And we didn't know.
Costume.
Yeah, I got the get up, you know. Like, and we didn't really know anything about it. Like, she was baptized Catholic. I wasn't. I was baptized Presbyterian. And I had all kinds of questions. I was curious about a lot of stuff. So we didn't really know what to do. I asked my supervisor at work, who's Catholic, and he almost like sort of was like, yeah, you got to go through what's called RCIA. It takes about a year. It's this and that. He's like, honestly, for real, like you might not want to do it. You know, it's a lot. Like, so he almost like sort of persuaded me like away from it, thinking like, unless you really want to be Catholic, like it's a lot. And anyhow, so Autumn and I were like, let's go to church and just like check it out. And I had been to like our local parish. I had been in there one time. I was driving down the road and the doors were open. And I'm like, let me go check this place out. Just kind of like how you and me, Molly, like went into the chapel or whatever. And I was like blown away. It was so pretty. And you know, I imagined it was like a rich parish or something. It's broke. But it was really pretty. And I was telling Autumn, like, we should go to that one church I went into that day. So we went there and we liked it. It was time for RCIA to come around. So we got like signed up with that. And that's super good for anyone who's like questioning. And there's a term for it, like when you're like Catholic curious or whatever. And I forget the term off the top of my head. I should have written it down before this. But there actually is like a formal term when people are like curious about the church and interested in it. And you know, all those questions like what do nuns do? Who's the Pope? Like, do you guys worship statues?
Yeah.
What's the rosary? Like, you know, like I didn't know nothing about none of that other than I would wear it to look cool. You know, and take photo shoots, like warding off vampires and stuff or whatever, you know, like I like there's more crucifixes in this house than I can count. And I don't know that I bought, you know, more than 2 of them after turning Catholic. So I always sort of had this stuff. And, you know, the more you start learning about it, the more you're like, wait, this like makes perfect sense. I've been lied to. So you almost feel like betrayed. And I when I was talking to my mom, I was like, yeah, we started going to like a Catholic church. And she's like, oh, you don't want to do that, you know, type of thing or whatever. You know, and I thought she'd be happy I was like going to church at all. But she was kind of weird about it, but that didn't stop me. And then I get like in little arguments and like, well, you know, we're the one true church and we're the first church and like stuff like that. And you start to realize like, yeah, the Catholic Church is the original. So there's like the Sisters of Mercy, and then there's all the cover bands that sound like the Sisters of Mercy. So you can either be in the original band or like a cover band, and that's how I see it now. So all
That's a
these
good analogy.
these other denominations just water it down and come up with whatever floats, whatever works, whatever's going to get people through the door, whatever's going to get money in the offering basket. Whereas the Catholic Church doesn't operate like that at all, to almost to a detriment, where they're like, you're putting yourself out of business, really. You might want to consider, like flexing a little bit so we can get some more people coming. But it's good that they didn't, because people are coming now, and but yeah, it was kind of a weird experience just to kind of get in there and be able to talk to a nun and ask them like nun questions, like, why don't you wear your outfit? And stuff like that. And I'm ignorant, so I'm gonna ask the dumbest questions to whoever. I don't care. And yeah, it was a great experience, and I just like it, and I like the fact that once a week you can go and you can reflect on things, you can think about people. I hadn't seen Molly for 23 years, but I was praying for her every Sunday. You know what I'm saying? You pray to your mom, you fucking whatever. Like, I don't know how you are, Nora, when you're at church, but there's a lot of like time for like reflection and like to think about stuff. And I'm big into having like conversations with God. Always have. Even when I was like, off church or whatever. Since I was a little kid, I talked to myself a lot, and I've always talked to God a lot. And and I think that's healthy. So I think if someone's out there who's like, oh, I don't know what to do, just start talking to God. Honestly, just ask questions like, yo, God, what should I do? Where should I go? Should I be Catholic?
Yeah.
So that was kind of like how we sort of got into it. And like I said, we're 9 years into it, and still every Sunday,
Since your wife was baptized, was she like kind of a revert, or was she always living a Catholic life? Or did you have to go to OCIA or what?
No, she had to go through because she was baptized Catholic, probably like in the same way Molly was. It's just like what you did. You don't want your kid to go to hell or whatever. So let's get them baptized real fast. And I think it was probably like that. Her grandpa was very Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Her grandpa was very Catholic. Her mom had become born again at some point, and that's a whole nother ball game. And I'm not like discounting that. Whatever, any kind of Christianity is better than like going online and trying to trash people over AI or like whatever.
Honey, you've had a week.
Yeah, whatever, people trying to exactly like it's just so much like noise out there, and so I would anything you could do to get away from that and surround yourself with like a different mindset. And I always liked that when I was in Arizona, because I had my church friends, and then we had a club called the Fine Line, which was like our Gothic club, and like all ages, just freak show type of place. And I had a good balance. So I had like those friends, and then I had like my church friends. And it was good to have that. Whereas like in LA, it was just like 100% like goth rock, it was a little bit different. And now it's like I'm pretty involved with the church now, I would say.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm at. I think there are a lot of themes in my life about fairness and purpose and wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself. And so I certainly I want to be like open, because I feel like there's a lot of people like me that lack a little bit of purpose and lack a little bit of that faith. And they, it's real easy to say that God exists when you see rainbows everywhere, but we haven't all had life super easy. And so it's kind of hard to think that you have somebody rooting for you if you have like struggled your whole freaking life. And so I don't know, I know that this is kind of emotional for me, but I really don't want to, I love you guys and I don't want to insult anyone, but my dad is very, very Catholic, and now he's 91. And one of the things I think about is that after being so devout for 91 years and, having all the talismans and saying all the prayers, like just right, and doing the novenas and doing the confession and like all of this stuff that to me seems kind of like witchcraft, you know, to have the secret thing. And if you die wearing this, then you only have to be in purgatory until Saturday. And if you die wearing this, then you don't have to go to purgatory at all. And if you say this thing for 9 days straight in a language that was totally different when it was written, but trust me, this is the one true thing. I think I get a little bit confused about that kind of stuff. What I love about faith and is just having that gratitude, having that purpose and a soul. And I had an idiot alcoholic boyfriend in like 2005. And he got robbed on the subway and he lost his eye sockets, his sinus cavity, pieces of every tooth, his jaw, his collarbone for $40 in his wallet.
Wow.
And it's a whole story, but essentially he was in the hospital and maxillofacial specialists having these like giant conversations about how they're going to put his skull back together because you can't put a cast on your face. And we all know that Luke Skywalker never looked the same. But I think one thing that really impressed me was that these nurses that were at the hospital had this grit, this faith, this like love about them, this feeling of security that everything was going to be okay because there's this beautiful, perfect sky daddy that loves us all equally. And he knows that we're like his flawed children, but he loves all of us. And although I was very like drawn to that and so like jealous that they would have this resolve, this feeling that everything was going to be okay, to have this stability through faith. I also it brought up a lot of questions about like, well, why did this shit happen in the first place? How come these like human fucking savages were allowed to walk the streets? Like, how come, you know, that they never even found them, even though they called me from my business card that was in his phone. And like, there were just a lot more questions, I think, about God's love. And I don't know that anybody has the answer. One of the firefighters at work is such a dear friend to me, and his wife is just so beautiful. And I mean, if you could guarantee that you would have children like theirs, I would have 100. Just a beautiful, beautiful family. And so they took me into their house for a Bible study. And I think I just had like too many questions and I think I burnt them out. And I don't mean to be like black-pilled about it or, you know, whatever, but it's just always been my nature, whether it's like politics or art or religion. It's like, I just want to know everything. I want to get to the bottom of it. I don't know. But I think I've always been that like puzzle solver ever since I was like a little kid. And so to me, I think it's full of so much beauty, but it's also full of so much sadness that there's a 91-year-old man out there that's like getting ready to leave. And he's so scared. He doesn't have that faith that he's going to be rewarded at the end of all of this, because he might trip and that talisman might fall out of his pocket, or he might not go to confession like at the right second. And I guess for me, like that part of Catholicism, the guilt, the doom and gloom, the like you're gonna go to hell any second, like I don't resonate with that. I love like the Gothic part of it, you know, with like worshiping the, you know, saints and these statues and all the beauty and the crosses and the Virgin Mary. I have a big collection of Virgin Marys at home. So like visually, I love it. But I also just feel like it's got some sadness for me.
I would say, you know, there's a lot of questions there. And I think, you know, one thing, the reason the bad things happen is like a lot of people think God's like, you know, some puppet master and everything is all predestiny. And that's not the case. We have free will. We can do what we want. So by allowing free will, you're inserting like insanity into an equation. So you're allowing for this other wacky stuff to happen to good people because someone else got free will. And I think, you know, all the little trinkets and stuff that your dad might be like sort of quote unquote superstitious about or whatever, like that really isn't like part of being Catholic. And I think that's where it's important to go through, like, you know, the OCIA or whatever they're calling it now, because you can ask those type of questions, because that's what it's all for. It's for, like, asking the questions, and they have
Yeah.
books. And also, I'd recommend just Catholic. I think it's called like CatholicQuestions.com or Catholic.com, and you
Catholic
can
answer.
yeah,
Catholic.com.
Catholic answers. Sometimes you just like, is it wrong that I saw a ghost today? You can just like see what they,
I haven't seen a ghost, but
you can see what it has
Really
to
good
say,
story.
and it'll be like, well, actually in Matthew, whatever, there was a apparition appeared to Jesus. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it'll like say stuff, but I would say, Nora can probably vouch for this. Our priests are always scared of dying. They'll have sermons about it. I think everyone's like a little bit hesitant, and
but
I
if you have faith, like, doesn't it leave you with just such like happiness that you're going to go to the great party in the sky and your hips aren't going to hurt anymore and your dog's going to be there or whatever? Like,
I think so. It can.
Well, I have something to say. I think this is something interesting that I learned, that there's something called scrupulosity, and this is a sin. It's You're not supposed to do it. So it's basically where you're constantly paranoid about being in a state of sin, and that when you die, you're gonna be not. You know what I mean? Like, you haven't gone to confession, and now you're gonna do that. And so there's a lot of people who struggle with that. And so if your father is that way, it would be a good idea to have a priest, or, maybe a lay person from the parish, if he does go to a parish, to talk to him about that. Because it can start weighing people down. And I think from what I've heard, I think that kind of stuff deters people. Like, they're so tired of, like you mentioned, like the guilt, Catholic guilt. And so once I kind of learned about that, it's not so much guilt. It's just, you kind of keep yourself aware of, like, hey, I know I'm not supposed to do this or that. So, just, it gives you like something to think about. You have guidelines, but we all are going to sin. Everybody does. So regardless, it's not like, the faith is the most important part. And Catholicism really is the fullness of the faith, because it's not just about the Bible, and it's not just about faith, but there's so much more that creates this sense of peace. And, like, you're not alone, because we have our Blessed Mother in heaven and the saints that we can pray to and ask them to intercede for us. And that's like a concept for some people they don't understand so much. It's, even for me, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, but it would be the same concept of like asking your friend to pray for you. Going through a hard time, can you pray for me right now? It's basically the same thing, because truthfully, the saints are perfect. And so I think what Catholics believe is that their prayers for you are more powerful than anybody else's, because they're, in this, they're saints, and so, and there's so many saints, I don't even know them all. But so when you become confirmed, you pick your saint that's special to you, however that works. So I'm still new, so I'm still learning everything. But that was one of those things that I actually learned about, because I was just in a non-denominational kind of evangelical church. I've been to some crazy ones. I'll tell you about that later. But it was just like, believe, and that's it. But the problem is that because I didn't have those guidelines and things to think about, like, hey, that's sinful, you shouldn't be doing that I actually just kind of was living the same life. Like, I didn't really clean up my act. And because I was like, well, I'm saved, my salvation is guaranteed, so God knows my heart, it doesn't matter if I'm doing this or doing that, that's fine. And so I think when people struggle with scrupulosity, they're not doing bad things, but they might think, oh, there could be something they're going through that's making them feel like they're not in good standing, when really they probably are. And if, depending on what condition your father's in, they do come to their house, and he can receive the sacraments there and stuff.
He does, and they do pick him up. And my brother drives a couple hours to take him to mass and stuff. And the scrupulosity thing, like, predates me. My dad has been telling me since I was a little kid, that he's
Oh,
going to
okay.
die any second, and that, you got to do this, that, and the other. And
Yeah.
he was very happy, telling me as an adult that I came to him as a kid, crying, afraid that I was going to go to hell. And he thought of that as such a beautiful, like, time that, she's a believer. And I think of it as like, how fucking dare you like tell your kids they're going to go to hell? Like, that's just,
And I think that's the problem sometimes too. And I think that's a good reason to also have conversations with God, because then you can kind of air your stuff out. You can just like talk like, listen, I effed up today. I was such an a-hole at work. Yo, help
yeah.
me better tomorrow.
I guess that's like part of my question. And I don't know that it's a question, but maybe just a confusion that maybe you can explain to me. It's like when I was going to Bible study with the firefighter's wife, and like every time she would open the Bible, like she would just cry. It was so beautiful to her. And she just got this feeling, and her life was so wonderful. And she has this like awesome husband and 3 flawless like AI children that are like
that's a lot of water they're taking up though.
like marginalized whales being killed everywhere. And so like, it's like we didn't come from the same background. And like I grew up, my dad took us to mass, and we would go because afterwards you could either get an ice cream or a donut, and it was up to you. And we were like, for 45 minutes of sitting quiet, I can go get a donut. I'm in.
Yeah, no problem.
And my mom was Buddhist, and she would take us to these like Hollywood Buddhist meetings with all the celebrities there, and they had the beads and they would chant, and like the chanting is the sound of the universe, which just incidentally happens to be Japanese phrases. And you're just like, okay, like, and it's like all actors there and stuff. And just looking at it from that perspective of just like, if you chant, I guess that's part of my problem with praying is like, if I pray for a parking spot, like if I was God, I would just be like, fuck you, bro. Like I got other things to do besides like go find you a parking spot. No, or like you pray for like this little kid to not have cancer anymore. Like God let the kid have cancer. Like he can do miracles, but the kid has cancer. So like, I guess there's just this sort of confusion in my mind of like, how much does he love us? And if you say that it's totally unconditional and awesome, but like to me, and I know I'm putting like my human flaws onto God, which is so above me, but like to ignore people that are suffering, and to have apathy while people are going through stuff, to me is not love. And so that's a little bit hard for me to think that we are all equal in God's eyes. I don't see that. I didn't see that as a police officer. I've seen people do some horrendous shit to other people. I totally understand free will, but it wasn't the free will of my victim to be there at that place and time. And so I guess that's where I have a little bit of a problem of like how it all works. I just have questions about the functionality of this heaven place. Like everybody wants to marry Beyonce. So like, does the person who prays the most get her? Or like, are there a bunch of Beyoncés? Or like, how does this work?
Well, Molly, that's a really common thing. I mean, and that's one of the things that I think prevents people from Christianity in any denomination, whether you're a Protestant or a Catholic, is because it's hard for people to understand that God is all knowing and all loving, but then people suffer and there's catastrophes that happen. And so it's for our brains, it doesn't make sense. How are you unconditional love and then people are suffering? But there are, I can't give you the full answer, but there is an answer for it. And so those are the types of answers that you get when you go through LCIA and talk to your priest about it, because it's a very common question. I mean, that's the first thing that people are like, hey, I love this, happiness and joy and being filled with love and having a different outlook on life that takes you out of the real world and makes you realize that this life we have is so insignificant anyways. And so I was the same way. I was like, kind of like, why everybody seems like they're so happier, these people who are
I definitely see that.
One thing I want to say is like, I wasn't in my family. I think my parents are like kind of more cramming the Christianity on the idea of like, oh, we want you to be with good morals and don't steal, don't this, don't care if somebody else has something that you don't have that doesn't have anything to do with you. So there was always like that sort of like logical, like, okay, that's a good way to live, good guidelines. But like kind of like with your dad, Mo, like I was never trusted, like taught like this blind faith that like everything's going to be great. So, but like I'm around that at church, kind of like what you're saying with these nurses that are just like, that are just so, and maybe you could call it brainwashing or whatever, but they're just so since childhood, God's great, God's going to be there, everything's going to be wonderful. Just do the best you can do every single day, love the best you can love every single day, and bad things are going to happen, but you're going to keep loving. And remember, bad things happened to Jesus. He was hung on a cross, he was beat, he was, crucified, all this stuff. Bad things happen to everyone. Just
Right.
do the best you can. What is going on with Nora?
Yeah, I know. I'm like switching around. My camera like turned off, and so I'm trying to put it back. Sorry.
So like I kind of wish like I had like more just like blind faith too, because I'm definitely like not a skeptic of really like anything like that, but it's just like I don't know. I wish I'm not happy. Like we've talked about this before. I'm not happy. I've never been happy. I was a sad kid. I'm a sad adult, and I've never felt alone. And a lot of times people are like, oh, how'd you get the nerve to like move to Hollywood all by yourself? Well, God's there. So I always had like a certain degree of faith. Like I'm not going, what's the worst that could happen? Like I'm homeless. Like who cares? I've been homeless. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's temporary. And like Nora says, our life here is temporary. And if you treat it as such, that there's something better waiting for you, you can kind of deal with like the BS and the trauma and stuff because you realize this is a result of someone else who doesn't have faith or is living selfishly. And you got so many people right now, so many people living selfishly. People could argue, those of us who are messing with AI, like, how could you? And there's in their defense, Molly, like we're not doing the world any favors. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like you got to put things in perspective too and like be realistic. And God gave us the minds to create AI and the equipment to do it and the know-how and the innovation and whatever. So it's also a byproduct of our abilities and our gifts. So it might not be as bad as people think. Say we destroy the earth. Okay, well, again, this life's temporary, and there's a whole galaxy out there with other planets. I think the Earth is going to destroy itself eventually, or the sun's going to blow us up, or something. We're not going to be here forever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so to act like, oh, you're killing the Earth, like no, like we're not going to be here that long.
I was just thinking that it's like honestly, it's like you have all this stuff. When I was living my life, I wasn't in a really good place when I decided to go to church. And I really just kind of thought about it like, well, what do I have to lose by becoming a Christian? It's not like my life is going to be worse. And so at that point, I mean, that's kind of a boring argument, but it was just like, well, look at my life now. And, when you see other people so happy and doing well, and even if it's not the same level, Christians statistically are just happier people. Because, and
I keep cutting you off. Do you practice gratitude, Mo?
I try to be grateful for good things, but like, I don't know, you've known me for decades.
I mean, you're just like a fun person. Like, yeah, I knew you as fun and funny. You know what I'm saying? Like always down for like fun.
Laugh at some pretty dark shit. Am I grateful for the dark shit? I guess in a way, it's like if my life hadn't have blown up, if I didn't get a flat tire, I'd never know how to fix a flat tire. So I guess like in that way, I am Rose Thistle Art, who's on the chat, and I've been really bad at getting to the chat, guys. but she says that I'm optimistic, and I'm like, I am, because I feel like I'm just so like sarcastic. But I've always been pretty good at just being able to like laugh off terrible shit. But I don't know that I'm like, I try to be better at being grateful. I do think that humanity needs more purpose, more of a North Star, more of a 30,000 foot view of where we're at, because like right now there's just, I see so much like darkness, and it's not just these like rabid Karens that are in your like chat, and there's plenty of them, but there's just a hollowness that people are filling with all kinds of addictions, whether that's screen time or pornography or video games. It's like dopamine, and just all the like infighting and like political sides and like celebrity worship, and like we just have this like selfie culture of like people who are just self-obsessed. I do think that it is so important to have something more important than yourself. And whether that is your parents or your career or God, like I think that it's important to be grateful for something bigger than you, and to see yourself. And I'm not saying that this is like like all over the world, because Americans, like, we have this absolute glut of ego and self-centeredness, entitlement, and vitriol right now. And what else does America have? We have school shooters. They don't have that in other countries, because they don't have this amount of entitlement and ego and vitriol in other countries. You look, Maddie and I, we shared a pen pal 100 years ago in Japan. I was like super into Japanese and all this stuff.
Here for a while.
Yeah, and so I'll see you on Duolingo. But where I
I'm
cheat.
learning German on Duolingo.
Oh, you are? I'll have to add you. I cheat unapologetically
Yeah.
on Duolingo. So, but so like you look at like the Japanese culture, where people are very proud to be that small cog in a giant system. And whether you are, an office worker or you clean the streets, like everybody understands their importance in getting along and being a part of a system. And America is totally like the opposite.
Well, I
I'm
think
important. And
America is unique in the situation of, first, we're huge. Tokyo is like what, the size of like Connecticut or something, or like this. The country of Japan is very small compared to the United States. And then also we have so much diversity and so much going on that not everyone's thinking on the same page. So we have that going against us too, which is also one of our, glowing factors. It's like, it's a benefit and a curse in a way. So some like countries like Japan, they're all Japanese. They're taught the same thing. They're essentially raised the same way. And I feel like in the United States, things were on a certain path at one time, for better or worse.
mhm.
And it was, we didn't have the crime. We didn't have like the egos and all the kind of weird stuff we have now. But then at the same time, we had other problems. We had women that like were forced to like have babies and sit in the kitchen all day and couldn't get a job if they wanted to. And we had like gay people getting like murdered for being gay and thrown in jail or whatever. So there's, we have to find like this kind of common denominator where it all works. And I feel like if people could kind of open their eyes, open their minds a little bit to like, yeah, there's something bigger than us. That there
I
is.
think there's two things that I was piggybacking off of what you were saying, is that, for one, if reading the Bible and just understanding Christianity as a whole, that God designed us to have a special place in our heart for Him only. And so people inherently have this put in them to want something bigger than themselves. And that could be any type of spirituality. So a lot of people do chase spirituality in other ways, or, maybe they use their vices as that's way to fill that void. There's a void inside of us that at some point we get to a point where nothing's really working out. Like you just kind of see it where people, try to be, Wiccan or whatever, or be, whatever you're into. And so, but it just doesn't, it's not as fulfilling because it's not meant to be, you know? And so that's something that once I kind of understood that, and made more sense that God did give us free will, because he didn't create us perfect, and he didn't create us to automatically love him and want to serve him and have him, because why would you want to like force someone to love you? It's just not as good. You want someone to choose you, choose to love you.
That part of it, I guess, is a little bit scary for me, Nora, because I worked domestic violence, and I've seen some really horrendous things happen with people who loved the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that sort of brings me back to that whole, the concept of hell, where it's like, if you don't do everything just right and the dishes aren't done when you get home, then you're really going to get it. And it's like, that's not love. And so why do we think that that's love when it's God sending us to hell because we didn't walk into the right building Sunday morning because our parents were Buddhist or Protestant or whatever? And so I have a hard, like my nephew, they're grown a little bit now, but when they were little, they had come out. I don't remember why. I think it was somebody's funeral, but they had come to California to see me. And one of them said, "You know what, Aunt Molly? You know what I wish more than anything? I wish you weren't going to hell." And I was like, okay. Why am I going to hell? Well, because you don't go to our church on Sunday. So God made this whole planet, and he put people all over the planet, but only people that walk into your building on Sunday are going to be saved. Isn't that, can you look at it another way and just say well, I'm a police officer, so however you feel about cops, sometimes I'm an angel that's helping people in their time of need, but I could selfishly just go, screw that. I'm going to go be in that building in Arizona every Sunday because I would rather go to the great party in the sky than help people. And selfishly, how does that, work? And so I could see the cogs turning in the other nephew, but the one who thought it was going to hell was like, well, that's just it. You just can't go to heaven because you can't come to church. So I guess it's you think about, are we really just that close to going to hell all the time? And I think about if God made us, and I know, Nora, you can understand this because, the Catholic Church is they've been a lot more accepting of, gay people as of late. Like Maddie is saying, hey, we got to open the velvet rope and let a few more people in or this shit's going to die out. But of our gay friends that we totally grew up with and loved, not one of them woke up one day and was like, you know what I'm going to do? I decide I'm going to be gay. There's nothing they could do about it. And you could tell them they are forced to marry a woman, but that doesn't mean that they're going to love her in the same way that they look at men. And so God made them gay. I am convinced of that. Having gay friends my whole life, I don't think it was ever a conscious decision they made when they were 5 or whatever. And so God made me a questioner, and it has plagued me my whole life. So,
well, that's the thing. That's your gay right there. God made me a hoarder. God made me addicted to having a very addictive personality. That's why I steer away from drugs. I'm an absolute addict. If I would have done drugs, I would have been done. I found that out at a very young age with gambling.
Really?
Absolutely, at gumball machines. And it upset. That's how funny. It's funny, right? But I absolutely have an addictive personality. And, we have our flaws. We all have our and I'm a jerk on top of it. So there's we all have things we struggle with or whatever. And I feel the way the church views the gays, they're getting a bad rap in that department for sure. But then I think there's also I think there's still a lot of debate on the whole hell. What is hell? You start looking in the Bible, how often is hell even mentioned? How is it mentioned? What does it even say about it? Is it really even there is the way we see it? Or are we looking at the book of Revelations, which could just have been like a peyote trip. Like, who knows what John was like dreaming up when he saw what he saw? That's a revelation. You know what I mean? That's not something like Jesus said.
Yeah,
And
I mean, Jesus didn't specifically say that you're going to burn it for all eternity in a lake of piss and fire, but I mean, I think that that's like where we all kind of take it.
yeah, but we take it for different ways, because then there's also like with Paradise Lost and Dante's Inferno, they had their like visions that have kind of infiltrated pop culture, infiltrated the church's like imagery. And you got to think there's 2,000 plus years of politics involved. So there's a lot that was done that was probably like done for a reason, i.e. to control people, to manipulate people. And the church isn't perfect. Like, anytime you inject people into the equation, you're going to get that manipulation, that greed, that change. And that's part of it. So that's where you sort of look back on the Bible. And then also with the Bible, and before this, like, the Catholic Church is not a fundamentalist church. So we're the original church. Everyone else is a cover band. Some of these cover bands take the Bible's word as fact. Like, if some giant hand came down with an ink pen and wrote it, then that is not the case. The Catholic Church does not believe that. It believes it was inspired by the teachings of Jesus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing that I had to kind of get over from my teaching, being a Protestant or evangelical, Bible alone, they don't even want to have a denomination. It's just, I'm a Bible Christian. That's it. I just follow Jesus and stuff. And that's beautiful, obviously. But there were just a couple things that I was confused about, because in the Catholic Church for 2,000 years, the solid teaching on what's in the Bible is all the same. Nobody has a different interpretation. It is what it is. So it's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, where basically they say, this is how we interpret scripture, and this is how it's been interpreted for 2,000 years. That's not going to change. Whereas in the other cover bands, I guess you could say, people say, well, I read scripture and I'm led by the Holy Spirit, because they're interpreting, I don't know the actual Bible verse, but it says that all scripture is good for teaching or something. And so the problem is for that is that as human beings, as selfish people, naturally, we can twist what we read to serve our own personal interpretation of what that scripture means. And so that's why there's so many different denominations and so many different opinions, because everybody's relying on their own interpretation. So that pastor's teaching their church this, and the other pastor's teaching their church that. And so there's a lot of inconsistencies, and that's really confusing for some people. For me, it's confusing because I'm not a theologian. I'm not a scholar. I don't know how to interpret scripture. And I've read the Bible for many years when I was going to church. But once I realized, when you go all the way back to Jesus and his disciples and the early church fathers, if you read some of their stuff, like Saint Irenaeus, and you can see that everything that they're teaching is consistent to what's happening now. And so another thing that I didn't understand is that when you go to Mass, they are reading scripture. It's just different. So they have a 3-year liturgical calendar. If you go to a Novus Ordo Mass, they do, year A, year B, and year C. And they basically go through almost the entire Bible. And so if you go to Mass every day, which you can 7 days a week, and read scripture. So it's not like you're just left on your own and you just have to read the Bible at your own pace, and what you do is up to you. And quite frankly, I'm not good at that. I was just like, well, I am not in the mood right now. So either way, the point is that the priest is there to give you a homily, which is basically a sermon, and talk to you about what the gospel message is, what's being read in scripture today. And another thing that's really cool that I learned about in Catholicism is that when you look at the Bible, it changed the whole way I looked at the Bible, because we have the Old Testament and the New Testament. But the Old Testament is the old world, right? The New Testament is fulfilled. The Old Testament is fulfilled in the New Testament, and they really tie together, like the sacrificial lamb is now Jesus is the lamb, you know? So it's really complicated. I can't make sense of it all, but it made sense to me where I was like, wow, okay, I get it. They're connecting the old, because each time you go to mass, they read from some of the Old Testament Psalms, and then they do gospel readings. So kind of showing you all together, this is what this whole thing is right now. And when you think about it like that, and you're like, and it all makes sense. And for me, I was like, well, I don't want to have to figure everything out and try to make sense of everything. And there are a lot of resources to get those answers that you have. There's the Didache, which is some of the collections of writings from the early church fathers. And that helps people make sense of things when they say, well, that's nowhere in the Bible. You can just go back and look at these writings that were done in the 1st century. And so you can see that these people were the disciples of Jesus's apostles. So what they're writing down, talking about baptism, talking about the Eucharist, taking communion, and how they believe that it's quite literally the body, blood, soul, and divinity when you take communion. And so that's why it's so important too. And I know it seems like the Catholic Church, like you said, it feels like a velvet rope you have to get there. And that's just because ultimately it comes down to the Eucharist and being in good standing to be able to receive Jesus' body and blood. You know, like any person can walk in and go to mass, but not everybody can take communion. And so at the end of the day, that's what it is. So
that part makes sense to me. I'm not a fan of loopholes. I'm not a fan of shortcuts. And I think maybe that's where, like, I understand a lot of people require religion and the set of rules that it gives you because it gives them an internal locus of control that they don't otherwise have. In other words, I don't rape, pillage, and steal because it's wrong. But some people need, you know, it written on a tablet, or like, you know, here are the standard operating procedure for life. And some people do need that. So I guess for me, I don't know where. So,
do you feel like you would do you think that there's too much structure?
No.
Or do you like structure?
I don't mind structure. I can work well within structure. I don't require structure, and I don't need to be micromanaged. I think for me, like, I was going to the traditional Latin Mass. It's so beautiful. It's so Gothic. It's, you know, it's full of a lot of what I used to enjoy about the Goth clubs is that it's that pageantry, it's that beauty, that like hauntingness, that, you know, and it's very
reverent and it's very ancient. So when you kind of think about, this has been since it's the same, but the way that the Latin Mass now was after the 1500s, kind of like after the Reformation.
But hold
so
on, can
either
I say something?
Hold on, what?
It's actually, if you go back to Justin Martyr in like
you can't be heard. You have to come to the camera.
If
yes,
you
Cubby.
go back to,
we need to see you.
If you, I've been wanting to speak up, but
you should come to a chair here. It's fine.
I have to be up at 3 a.m.
It's fine.
The basic body and structure of the Mass goes back to writings from Justin Martyr, who was one of the first martyrs in like maybe 100 years after Jesus. So the Mass has changed in language because it was adopted through Latin and not in Greek, but that the structure of the Mass with readings and with the Eucharist and with letting people go before the Eucharist was
Like dismissal.
the dismissal for the Mass of the faithful. So people who are allowed to take communion, that was all happening almost 2,000 years ago. There you go.
Yeah, so that's a technicality. But for some people, like, you know, I went to my first Mass in English at the Novus Ordo. So you can, if you'll do more research about that, but that's just basic Catholicism. If you go to any Catholic Mass, that's what it is, unless it's a Latin Mass. Or unless they have other ones like Byzantine Catholic masses. So there's some other ones out there that are actually pretty cool. I haven't experienced those, but some people really like that. But you can find something that fits you better. And, you know, if you feel like you're not getting that interaction with people, it's really just the parish, I think. You know, some
that's a
people
little bit weird about the traditional Latin Mass is that when I was young and you would turn to your neighbor and shake their hand and say, peace be with you.
Yeah.
And like the traditional Latin Mass is like, you walk in, you go to your seat, you sit, stand, kneel, sit, kneel, sit, kneel, stand, kneel, stand, kneel, sit, kneel, get the fuck out. Like, and it's like, it's very like kind of intense in that way. Additionally, I don't speak Latin, so I feel like a lot of it is sort of incantation. There's like a weirdness to that.
Do you have something like this?
They do have that in the back of the chair. Wish I could steal one, but they won't let me.
Just take
I have
it.
this one, and I have another one that a friend gave me. That one's really good. So it does have the English, but if you're like new, I probably would just recommend going to a regular one because maybe the interaction, I think from my experience, people are friendlier, you know, in the way that they say hello to people, and it's kind of like that. Whereas a Latin Mass, people are just really focused on worship, taking communion, and that's all. That's the most important thing. It's not a social kind of thing, or they socialize outside.
Right. And doesn't matter like what time I go to Mass, I am the only person that doesn't get communion. So I feel like an a-hole just like sitting there while people are waiting me to get out of their way while they like get out of the pew, and you're just like, ah. But yeah, I don't mind that whole traditional strict thing. That doesn't bother me. But I think it's just not the place. Like to me, God is for everyone. And I don't like that whole like gatekeeping idea of it, that it is like some kind of like VIP lounge to try to like break into.
Well, there is a technicality that I heard about. Now, don't quote me on this, but you were already baptized Catholic, so technically you're Catholic. If you know you were baptized Catholic, you're Catholic. This is what it is, like hands down, whether you were practicing or not. So technically, you can go to confession right now or whenever you want. And if you were, I don't know if you were confirmed or not, but you can go to confession. And so really there's only, you know, those technicalities that you have, but I think also it depends on the parish, because I've been to a couple different ones, and I think some are like really serious about it and some are more, you know, willing to work with you. But I think truthfully in your situation, I think that you're going to be good to go. But you just, it's hard, but I think you'll be, I don't know. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think like if you're going just because it's like pretty and gothic or whatever, that's probably not the right time to go unless you just like it unless it's for your own meditation. Because for me, like I said, I do a lot of prayer in church, and I like that environment. So it's almost easier to meditate and pray and think about stuff if you don't know what they're saying. You know, so it could serve that purpose. But if you're really trying to learn about the church or whatever, and I am, like I said, 9 years Catholic, that's it. Like I came from Presbyterian Sunday school to like, I don't know all the ins and outs of the stuff. So I'm not like the best, you know, I'm no expert. I go to CatholicAnswers.com if I got questions.
Catholic Answers is great.
Yeah.
You can be honest, honestly, ChatGPT is a great resource.
That kills the planet, Nora.
I'm just saying, if you just ask questions, because what it does, it'll give you sources. You're like, give me sources, right? I want to know this. Give me sources. So most of them go back to Catholic Answers. Catholic Answers is really good. But one thing that you can use is the thing that I sent you, I think a while back, but that was my OCIA online class thing. And that to me worked so well because they have videos you can watch and you can rewatch them. And they talk about all of these topics that new Christians and new Catholics have, you know, all the misconceptions, all the
produced well.
And
they're produced well.
Yeah, they're made really well. And I really like them. You know, some parishes do like their own little curriculum with different programs. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it's probably different. Like, I don't know, everything's kind of the same, but kind of different at the same time. But I think, and I don't, I don't really want to say this out loud, but I don't know if I'm going to heaven. You know what I mean? And it's not something I'm like losing sleep over, because again, I'm only 9 years into this. Still have like questions and stuff, and I have a lot of belief that hell may not exactly be as we imagine it, or pop culture has us imagine it. And I've always felt like we get recycled, like we go through life more than once until we get it right. And I definitely feel like this isn't my first time around, but I definitely feel like I don't want to keep. I want to get off the road. The merry-go-round.
I'm over this.
I'm ready. I'm ready to go. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm tired. I'm tired of like living lives. So
I think you're good to go, Matt. I don't think you have to worry about it. If anything, you might just have to hang out in like the little purgatory netherworld, like on Beetlejuice, where they just sit there.
And they're like, right. And I sometimes wonder if that's not what like another like life is. We're not like, maybe I'm in purgatory right now. Like
I did see that in the chat. Somebody said that this is purgatory right now. Hey, I have been so terrible
about your podcast.
No, yeah, my podcast is hell. I have been really terrible about
there's so much questions going on.
Yeah, I'm watching the chat and it's been great. You guys have been awesome. I just feel like there's so much to talk about. So if you guys could take some of these like tasty tidbits and throw them into the comment section, or just send it to me directly at mollysleuth@gmail.com so that we can have a conversation. Clearly, I'm a little bit lost in this world, and I would love any kind of like guidance or whatever you have. I do think that having faith and purpose is so freaking important. But I also just see that God is sort of like goth music. I'll get you there, okay? There's a lot of different flavors, there's a lot of different kinds of goth music. You've got the ethereal shoegaze, and you have the death rock, and you have industrial and all this stuff. And so with church, it's like you have all these different flavors. And like I was going to a Baptist church with the firefighters family, and totally the opposite of the Latin Mass. They go up there and, it's a priest who's like part of the community. Everybody knows him. He was probably like a soccer coach or whatever. And he goes up there with his little thing and goes, oh, and we got to pray for Martha. She stubbed her toe again. And Larry's coming home from the hospital, everyone.
We did the same thing.
And it's so community. And it's like a lot of this like singing. And it's like, I hate to say this because I hope that nobody's watching from there, but like, maybe not the best singing. Like they have the little kids go up there and they all have their hands in their pockets, and like somebody like drops something and it rolls away, and like it's just fantastic. And then at the end, like the priest is done, and the pastor is done, and he comes down and everybody just mingles like amongst the chairs. Like, how are you doing? It's so nice to see you. We have a fall fest. You don't have to bring any food, but there's going to be, so-and-so's bringing her meatballs. And like, it is so community. And it's so like about like, hey, if you're not doing anything next Saturday, we're all going over to Jen's house because she's moving across town and she needs help.
Interestingly enough, I have had people tell me that once they've converted to Catholicism, that they do miss the community and the fellowshipping aspect of their old Baptist church or whatever. So the way they go around that is that they do go to Mass on Sunday, but they attend some of the Bible studies or, get-togethers that they have at their churches, given that their church didn't cancel them for becoming Catholic. I didn't have the best reaction for becoming Catholic. So. But I think it does exist. So you can have both. It's just, you're not supposed to be going there. If you're actually Catholic, you're not supposed to go.
But see, that's the part that I think is silly. It's like,
but you can. If you go to Mass in the morning, you can go to another service later.
Right.
Because they don't really.
I think that you should be able to. But anybody that's like gatekeeping it, or like you have to stay in your flavor, like, oh, you like shoegaze, then like you're not allowed to like rudimentary peni, like because you like the Smiths, like you're not allowed to, you know, be into whatever. Like it's just that part of it seems like God is for everyone, and I don't like the idea that it's like gate kept. And I think that like goth music, God is great and amazing. Like even if your friend doesn't like him, like that doesn't have any bearing on like me liking it. Like I'm probably the only person in this chat that loves rudimentary peni. I don't know why that band like came up in my head. Fucking love them.
Oh gosh,
But
I
like
haven't heard that name forever.
they're obnoxious, and I'm sure that there's people just like, no, I can't get through 3 songs, and like lucky for you, they're all about 45-second songs, so you can do it. But like I feel like it shouldn't be gate kept. You know, I think it's like with the goth subculture, and we see this so much, and like I haven't really been a part of like the subculture like until Maddie and I reunited, and I've been on his page with all these people that are like gothic, and they're gonna tell me how it's done, and I'm like,
I'm a
sweetie,
poser, by the way.
you just got all my
But you know
clothes
what?
from
There
1994
are a lot
at
of
the store.
gatekeepers, and I can understand why, because there's so much, and I love that there's some of these younger baby bats, as they like to call them, that they're keeping that subculture kind of going, right? And it's not just fizzled away with like us, right? But there is a type of gatekeeping, and the reason why is because, and I understand with it, I kind of agree with it, but I think there's a level where you got to back off. But it's because, you know, remember how, you know, our clubs just felt exclusive, and they were like a safe kind of environment where you could just be yourself. It didn't matter, you know, if you were gay or wearing guys wearing makeup or whatever. Everybody was just, it was like kind of this environment that you felt safe in. So if you saw some bro coming in with like a backwards hat, and he was just trying to like come in there and dance like he's at a party or something, and like hit on goth chicks because they're hot, you know, or whatever. And it's like that environment where the people are like, we don't really want those kind of people here, you know? At least that's the vibe that I got from people I knew. And that
Yeah, but don't you think that was the negative part of goth, is that we were so fucking snooty and like hollow and devoid of like substance?
I think like what it sounds like to me, what like Nora's saying is like in the goth scene, we created our own little world separate from reality. So we didn't want the looky-loos coming in. Like we get that in reality 7 days, 9 to 5, 7 days a week. We don't want that. When we go to the goth club, we want the reality that we've created, that we put our, you know, our passions into or whatever. And I think the church is the same thing. It's a sanctuary by definition. You know, you want to get sanctuary from the noise and from the BS of the world. You don't want all that. And it takes effort. And like I think maybe what you're seeing is like gatekeeping might just be the effort it takes.
Yeah, because they don't want people to just come in and be like half-assing it, you know, like, because I mean, there's people that, Catholics even, that only go to church like twice a year. So whatever. But I mean, it's basically like a way to say, are you really committed to this? You know, or, you know, are you just another random person coming in? And it all comes down to the Eucharist, really, because you have to, that's the main thing. So like you could be going to mass all the time, but like you said, with communion, it's like, that's the one thing.
But it's God, and he's God for everyone. And he's God for people that go every day, and he's God for people that go twice a year, and he's God for people who don't even believe in him. Yeah. It's like, you know, when like Hot Topic became like, you know, everyone was clutching their rosaries in horror, like, oh God, Hot Topic. It's so like cheesy and like it's so shitty, and it's just like, you know, whatever they call Temu for goth and all this stuff. But like part of that is like exciting. Like I wish that everybody loved the same kind of food as me, because it would be everywhere, the same bands as me, because then I could see them like all the time whenever I had a moment.
But don't you think like our group of people back then, even though we were so different, but we wanted it to stay our thing, you know, like not let other people come in and change it or infiltrate and kind of, I don't know. Like, I think that's the gatekeeping aspect of it. It's like, this is our subculture. We created it and we're protecting it.
So Matt said something to me about 20 something years ago that is like basically Matt in a fucking nutshell. And he said, if it wasn't for everybody being so ugly, I wouldn't be so beautiful. And I think that God is for everyone. And it's like, you could be a Hot Topic goth and I don't care. Like, I'm a poser. Like, I grew up in the punk scene and like, I like some goth stuff, but like, ask me the last time I threw on The Cure. Like, I don't really care. Like, I got shit to do now. I got bills. I got to pay for, foreign wars and shit right now. So like, I'm not always dressed up. I don't even wear makeup to work. Like, I can't tell you the last time I wore like all that freaking jewelry I used to wear all the time. And so like, I'm a poser. We're all posers. And like, whether that's, the bands that you like or, being in church or something, it's like, when you would, not us, but like you see people online all the time say like, well, I was goth when I was 12. Like, oh, well, I was goth when I was 3. And it's like,
everybody's trying to
okay,
do
so, like, but it's just it's silly. It's nonsense. And if somebody wants to be goth, starting today, like, you can come over and pick up all my Cure CDs because I'm not listening to them anymore. And like,
I think sometimes with the goths, I think it's because of the music versus the look. From what I've heard from like the elder goths is like, you can't just be goth by just dressing goth, like you have to like, it's all about the music, the subculture.
But that
at
debates.
least for that's kind of, and like, yeah, who cares at the end of the day,
Exactly.
right?
At the end of the day, who cares?
Who cares? But I think that's why, at least nowadays, because of social media, there's a lot of goth like influencers, and they really do. I'm like looking at them like, dang, girl, your makeup looks on point. Like, our makeup back then looked crappy. Like, we don't have great makeup.
Well, there wasn't good makeup being made.
We were still using sponge applicators for eyeshadow.
Ben Nye, like foundation, and like, yeah, Wet and Wild.
Wet and Wild. Wet and Wild 509, Wet and Wild 522.
Yeah.
That was
very limited. Unless you could like afford like Lancome or whatever. Like, I think there was a MAC store on Hollywood Boulevard.
Yeah, but so like that was obviously, that was like cheesy, when Hot Topic would sell band shirts that were already like had safety pins and looked all worn and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And like, okay, it's in a way like it's kind of like stolen valor. Like, you already look like you've been in the scene for a long time, but like you just showed up and like bought something out of Hot Topic. But like, who cares? Like, if everybody was into goth, like that music would be a lot more accessible for me. And I just want everybody on board, whatever that is, whether that's Taco Bell or goth or God, like, just let's do it.
I wish we had Taco Bell. No, not Taco Bell. Sorry. I will not do Taco Bell. I wish we had Del Taco. Gosh. I was just reading an article online because I was like looking for flyers or something. And I read a couple articles talking about how everyone would go down to the Del Taco 24 hours. Every club was closed at 2 a.m. So everyone just met up there with the horrible bright lights, and everyone's makeup is just like sweated off, and like and you got the ravers, and then you got the goths, and then you've got the whoever else was there. But that was like one of my best memories. I used to love going there. And when you guys were talking about that last time, I was like, oh, I used to love that. I always talk about that. That was like the best part of going out to me. It was like, okay, let's all meet up.
Like, that was like Julian's porch, man. Like, if you had nowhere to go the next day, like everybody was on his porch. That was a scene in itself.
Oh, yeah. I wasn't invited there because I had a stalker and she was a sex worker, and it got a little awkward. But yeah. Well, I wasn't invited.
I think you probably could have shown up and no one would have cared.
I would have probably shown up. I didn't care. Yeah. The goth scene, like, let's be honest, we were like pretty shallow. We didn't have really that North Star. Like, it was kind of just a cheesy, fun, hollow, like vacuous. Maddie died. Kind of a scene. And
the sound went off. Can you still hear me, Molly?
I disappeared on my back.
I thought you reincarnated. I was getting
I
worried.
actually I forgot I had like this
Can
like
you guys
tablet.
hear me?
Yeah, I
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, I cannot hear you, so uno momento, okay?
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, some of these comments are kind of getting like crazy. You know, I didn't expect to have
Yeah, it's
so much
a
conversation.
polarizing topic because you're basically talking about like your purpose on earth. And of course that's gonna get a lot of different.
And I don't really like being looked at like as an expert because I'm like still going to church to learn myself, you know?
I'm back.
So it's like I'm no expert on any of this stuff, and like I'm not even gonna fake it. Like I'm still trying to
Do you see the comment from thanks for reading the comments? Matt looks at Molly. Listen, Molly Sleuth at gmail.com.
There's a
Do we have
lot
any
of
questions
comments.
from anybody?
Oh, look at that. Magic. What, Nora?
Are there any questions that anybody wants answered?
There were many. Matt's, I think, going through them now.
I'm just trying to like process it. A lot of people are chiming in, and I think that's great. And I can see if they're YouTube comments, I can see them later and read
Okay.
them.
And I'll jump in the comments later too.
Yeah, if you guys can take some of your good points or whatever you want to talk about in the comment section so we can like answer back and have a dialogue afterwards, that'd be rad.
One thing I did, like we had talked about this before, one thing I did wanted to bring up is the whole like organized religion. Oh, I don't, I like religion. I just don't like organized religion. And people, that's just one of those like catchphrases that people, echoed, I feel like in the 90s a lot, in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And then we talked about how I was running a really, I was renting out a house. I was a bit of a slumlord at one time. And I had this tenant. She was Section 8. She couldn't afford the security deposit. And, I was like, here's some resources. This is before I was any kind of going to church or anything. I had a packet of stuff the city had given me to give people who didn't know where to get money for their down payment. And I gave it to her. And the main one to get security deposits was the Catholic Charities, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was like, good luck. Let me know how that works out. And I pretty much at that point thought, like, she's not going to get a penny from nobody. You know what I'm saying? And don't you know, like a couple days later, she's like, yeah, I was able to get the $1,600 or whatever for the security deposit. And I was like, how?
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, that Catholic Charities you sent me to. And I was like, they just gave you the money? She's like, yeah. Do you have to go to church? No. So they just like, you just walked in off the street, said, I'm broke. I need $1,600 for this, like, and they're like, cool, just giving you the money. And she's like, yeah. All right, let's get this contract going. And it like stuck with me where it's just like, that's some charity right there, where you're expecting nothing from a human being.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. I thought at least you're going to get that guilt trip, go to church. Well, listen, if you become Catholic and you go through the process or whatever, here we can try to work with you on money or whatever. Here's $50. Like, no, they just straight gave her $1,600.
Wow.
Essentially no questions asked other than like, prove you have no money and you need a place to live. That was ultimately like what it was. And to me, that's amazing. Because we talked about this before our little pre-meeting, where it's like, I can't, when that crackhead comes up to me, yo, man, can I have $1 or whatever? I'm like, you're a crackhead, and I don't want my hard-earned money buying you more crack. You know what I'm saying? So whereas like I think the Catholic Church as a whole, they're like, yeah, here's the money. And I'm trying to be better at just like, yeah, man, it looks like you need some money. I'm not going to judge where you're getting it from or what you're doing with it, whatever. but I still find that like it still goes through my filter. So it's easier for me to like put money in the Catholic charities where I know that they're going to, as Jesus would, just give the money to where it's needed without that. And I think that can only happen in a quote unquote organized religion. There has to be, an organization behind that, operating that, financing it, running it, the numbers, whatever, the bank accounts, blah, 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 whatever. That can only happen really in like an organization. And I think that's, I don't know,
I
that
agree with that. And that's one of the things that I found out as well is that, when people talk about the Catholic Church and all the money and wealth and everything, and there's an explanation for all of these things to make sense of it, right? But that it is the largest charitable organization in the world. And so that's, you can't argue with that. And that's something that feels
Right, but
nice.
you've been to the Vatican, right? Have you?
Yeah,
Has everybody been to the
I
Vatican?
haven't.
Oh, okay.
No, I haven't.
have you been, Bo?
Yeah, 100 years ago. It's a whole story. Some photographer wanted to take my pictures at the Trevi Fountain, and I showed up at his hotel room, and he was in his underwear, and I said, "Cool, see you later." And so then he cried, and it was a whole thing. Much like most of my stories are, it was a whole thing.
How do you meet these quality individuals?
So he did not take any pictures of me, but that's okay because I got to go to the Vatican. I got to see a lot of stuff. I learned so much more about Rome, like hitting the ground running like a Navy SEAL with having like no idea and just being like, oh shit, that book about Rome or about, Rome that I didn't read on the plane. Like, all right, now I got to figure it out. Okay, tomorrow we're going to come down this river and I'm going to do this. But the Vatican, it's a whole compound, and it's like shocking the amount of wealth that's there. It is like, if I could say in one word, it is opulent beyond like all measure. The amount of gold and marble and statues and art and everything. And I think about, growing up with like my poor ass loser friends and how we believed in tithing and given our money. I always used to joke and say that my dad sent God to college instead of me because I'm just a high school graduate, but God got plenty of that money. And to me, like, okay, if they're charitable, and I did a whole show on charity scams, and just broadly, you have to give a lot more money to the top to have anything trickle down, because there are always overhead costs, and even just to lick the stamp to mail the check costs money. So I guess that's why I like smaller charity, of knowing the widow that lives in your neighborhood, of knowing what little kid needs a bike for Christmas, and doing more direct transactions than giving up to some giant enterprise to then trickle down. And with the Vatican, I mean, obviously, just like with LAPD, there are bad apples and they can ruin the bunch. And the Vatican has not been a stranger to having some bad apples. Mm-hmm. But I think the differentiation is that LAPD wants nothing more than to weed out those bad apples and drag them into the middle of the town square and have at them, because we don't want them. But the Vatican had a lot of, hiding with legal investigations of some of the bad apples and the things that they did. And Rosa Solart and I were talking earlier about the Vatican girl. I think it's like a Netflix special. This girl, Emanuela, was like 15 in like 1983, and she went missing. And she lived in the Vatican's compound in their city. And the Vatican just went, don't know nothing. And it wasn't until 2022 that they were like, yeah, we got some secret files that we've never like come to clean with. That's somebody's daughter. And so I don't think that like one priest defines the entire business, for lack of a better word, just like one cop doesn't define the entire department. Yeah. But if LAPD was not complying with lawful search warrants to get lawful information about crimes that occurred to little kids, like then I think people would feel a whole lot differently about the Los Angeles Police Department and how they're a part of the problem in that protection. And so I'm not dumping on Catholicism, but I think that's one of the biggest gripes that I hear from people is like, how do you separate your faith and your flavor of God with them as an organization or a business, I guess?
Yeah. So it's just mostly the way that I ask the same exact questions because it's just such a common question, it's obvious. And really, I mean, and I don't have like the perfect answer but there is an answer, and I did some research on this, so I can give you an answer. I just haven't memorized.
Sure.
But what I'm saying is that for 2,000 years, the church has had scandals. They've had bad people come in and do things, and the church is still standing strong. And that goes all the way back to Jesus telling Peter that you are Peter, and that means rock. You are rock, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And we see that still true today through the scandals, through all of these things that have happened, the indulgences back in medieval times and whatnot. But it is designed to within itself to deal with that kind of stuff. And unfortunately, yes, they do get infiltrated by bad people. But it's almost like the way that I made sense of it is like, okay, well, America's a great country, but we have people in our government that infiltrate our government and do bad things. But it doesn't mean America is inherently a bad country.
Yeah.
And that kind of made sense to me that way. Like, we have a good setup, but people come in and, do things, and it kind of sucks because other countries see America and they just see who's running everything and think that that's who we are. But that's not true. Most people want, the basic constitutional rights, right? But it's like, so I looked at it like that the Catholic Church has had some bad things happen, and they do have like a structure or a way to deal with these things within itself, to do reforms, which there have been, like going back and saying, okay, well, this whole thing, like in the medieval times with the indulgences, and that's a little bit of a confusing story, but they did make reforms and change things and, kind of fix things up. And then after the Reformation, they had a counter Reformation and then fixed things up. So it's like kind of like changed over time. And then with some of these other scandals that are more recent, and it's hurtful for people because they know that they love their Catholic faith. And when you hear these things, it's like kind of like, oh, it gives you a bad name, like you're Catholic. It's like, how could you be Catholic with all that stuff? And so really it just comes down to the gates of hell will not prevail against Jesus's church, the one true holy apostolic church.
I guess just being a cop and prosecuting cases, like I would like to see them a more transparent and more willing to drag their bad apples out into the light instead of, changing people's names and moving them to another city. And
there was some of that, like, after all the mess in the US, I know they spent a ton of money in France to kind of get an idea of like how bad it was there. And their minds were blown how bad it was there too. And it does like suck. And I think like one thing's kind of weird because we, getting married in Italy and how everything's just very kind of old fashioned. They like stamp papers still, and just like, and I think the Vatican still sort of works like that, where they might not have the best way of sharing information, and they're, I don't know. I don't think they're really like set up for the scandal, or they weren't for a long time. Whereas like now they're like, okay, yeah, this is definitely a problem, and it's been a problem. And I don't know that it's really going to continue to be a problem like it was, because I don't think that it's not I think a lot of it was a crime of opportunity, and I don't think those opportunities are going to exist like they had for the last 100 years.
Well, I mean, I'm not even just talking about the Catholic faith. Like, I think we're at a time period right now where we're finding out that there's a lot of really horrible things that are happening to kids all over the world. And I think, fairness has always been like a real defining theme of my life. And so whether it's, because there are to this day sanctuary countries where people who do those horrible things can go and be safe, and they will not extradite back to the United States. And
some of it's like pick and choose though too. Like the media loves anytime something happens in the Catholic Church.
oh, for sure.
You know,
Same with
whereas,
LAPD. You work for Poughkeepsie Police and you ain't making the news. You tell people you work for
Right.
LAPD and they're like, oh, I saw a lot of TV shows about that. Like, well, they
Yeah.
were all wrong.
and whereas like with like the the Muslim faith or whatever, it wasn't until recently that you're hearing about all these like 50% of the marriages are child marriages and stuff, and you're just like, you got to question like everything at some point. But some of it's just like what the narrative is and the trends of the media and what's
Yeah.
going on. So like I kind of ignore, you can't ignore it per se, but go back to Jesus, go back to the scripture, go back to like the heart of the matter and work from there. And like don't get caught up in all the people that screwed it up over the years. And like Nora said, it's lasted. It has lasted.
Yeah.
So there is a mechanism in place there. There is, there's enough strength for it to endure the hard times, but it does suck. And you do hear stories, and we remember when Sinead ripped the picture of the Pope on like SNL and got just raked through the coals on that, and she was a product of someone who, or she was raised in a bad church environment, yet was still very Catholic for a very long time. So I don't know. I think it's unfortunate. I think it's just one of those unfortunate things. It's like it's in people's families. What, don't have a family? Because some family over there, they got an uncle that molests their kids, or their dad molests their daughters. So
Yeah.
you don't ever get married. Don't get married, or you tell you your husband's going to molest your daughter. You know what I'm saying? You
Well,
can't.
one thing that's also cool is that there's so many young people now. I mean, you see it all over the place that all these younger people want Catholicism. Maybe they're leaving their more hip churches because they really want tradition.
Yeah, I love
it also
that.
has to do with young men. I think they're tired of feeling emasculated, and they like the fact that they can embrace their masculinity and be appreciated as men.
Yeah.
Whereas, our society is kind of like anti-man, like they're always making men stupid. Like if you ever see commercials, it's always the guy that's like the dumb one. Like, oh, I don't know how to do laundry,
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know how to do laundry.
Whatever, but you know what I mean?
Vacuum cleaner, right, Mommy?
It's always the woman who has it all figured out, and the guy is the dumb one. So these younger
Yeah.
generation, they're tired of that. And I think they like that the Catholic Church really embraces tradition and embraces young men to be manly and have family.
Yeah. I do love that. I do love the return to traditional gender roles and traditional whatever, like, because it worked. My parents have been married for 50 whatever years, and that's because my dad's job is to clean the pool and take out the trash, and my mom's job is to do the dishes and run the vacuum. And I think it does work. I mean, as cheesy as it is, like that sort of ideal of gender norms, like it does work. And that's why I think I see maybe this is why we see some of the people more like like Kat Von D, who has always had such a stringent internal locus of control. Like, I don't have a single tattoo, but I was like glued to every episode of LA Inc. because I love the way that she deals with her employees. Like, she was so diplomatic in hiring people that weren't at her level and trying to help people like get better. And I loved everything about like how what a fighter she is in life. And so for her to sort of leave the like Hollywood illusion and become this like beautiful mom and just really return to tradition and faith, it really is a wave. And I just wonder if, like, church is like the new club scene. Like,
I
this
think
really
it
is a
is.
place.
I think it is. I
I
think
think
people want to belong to something and they want something bigger that's like solid, not just like believe in yourself. Like we had, in the 90s and stuff, the new age and kind of concept was really popular. But it was, in a way, it was almost like a form of self worship. Like I'm in control, I'm going to manifest everything, blah, blah, blah.
I
But
think for
then,
me it's different though. I just want to be better. Like I kind of think of it like going to the gym, but
yeah,
like spiritually, where it's like I don't want any new friends. I don't want to feel I don't need belonging. I wasn't in the Gothic scene necessarily to feel like a sense of belonging. That was a different just form of expression or whatever. I'm not social like Molly is. I can be, but Molly's like she likes people. I don't particularly like people. You know what I'm saying? It's a horrible thing to say if you're Catholic. And it's like I know I'm not going to suddenly wake up and just love everybody. I know that, but I definitely can like reflect on how I treat people and how I act and sort of better myself. And I also just you're forcing yourself for me to have time to think about something other than yourself, really. And when do you ever do that?
yeah.
If you're not making time to go to church for an hour or so, when are you ever going to just sit there? It's like buying workout equipment for your house. Like who does that and who uses it? It becomes a laundry rack or whatever. Like you kind of have to like leave the house, go to the gym if you're ever going to like get anything done. And it's the same thing. I feel like I want to go and I want to think about people and pray and talk to my mom who's passed and like, think of just I don't know, that's what I get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to reflect and just like chill.
I see people that go to mass, like if they'll go early, will they pray the rosary for like 30 minutes or 20 minutes before mass starts. And sometimes I can't make it that early for whatever reason, but I can tell, that even after mass is over, they like sit there and pray and reflect. And, you could tell that they're really engaging in this space that is outside of the chaotic world and focusing on God, and that knowing that we're imperfect, but we can only be better with him in our lives, if that
And
makes
and I think a lot of like the criticized rituals and the weirdness that the pageantry or whatever the Catholic Church that people are like, oh, I don't need all that stuff, to worship Jesus or whatever. But I do think that stuff definitely is like an aid when it comes to meditation and to prayer, the incense and that ritual and a lot of it's tied to like nature and discipline and
yeah,
repetition and stuff. It has like a weird sense of purpose that it's very well thought out.
yeah.
You might think like, how did this come about? Well, yeah, it came about at some point, but someone like definitely like put some thought into it.
Well, even like the Gregorian chants, like I love Gregorian chants. And once I learned about that, Gregorian chants is the invention of music, like the way that they made the scales and everything, like they were the first ones, and it was just prayer. It's prayer. And so that's what they're doing. They're praying. There's different scriptures that they're reading and praying. And so they would do these chants. And so all of this stuff has a purpose. Like the incense has a purpose, the bells have a purpose, the art has a purpose, the chants have a purpose. It's all a form of catechesis to elevate yourself towards heaven. And it lifts you up, it puts you in a kind of a transcendent space that you feel like you can really, like tune everything out, I guess. And it's just, I don't know. That's why when I think of everything, how it feels like you have the fullness of the faith, like not just going to read the Bible and hearing a good sermon and worship music and stuff, which is nice. I like that part, but it felt like something was just kind of missing for me. I just felt like I was like, I don't know. I just felt like I wasn't really the best Christian, honestly.
No, I'm not.
I'm still not, but what I feel is that I actually feel more encouraged to be a better Christian.
Oh, sure.
like, and I think it's interesting how there is so much to learn. Probably I won't be able to learn everything, but other Catholics are really enthusiastic about helping people learn how to be better Catholics. Like there's a couple ladies will be this at the parish I go to. She's like, "Oh, here, read this, do this. Here's a missal." And she's just like all like, trying to steer me in the right direction. And I was like, gosh, that's really nice, because otherwise I'd just be riding solo over here.
One thing, like this drum zombie definitely wants to be heard. He's been blowing up our stuff. One thing that we're going to see, didn't sling around a beaded necklace to pray to. Jesus didn't sling around a beaded necklace to pray to. You're right. There. Did I validate you? Again, it's the exercise equipment. That is just a tool to keep you focused on prayer. I think like a lot of the haters, they're looking too deep into it. They're reading too deep into like the rosary. No, you do not. Like my sponsor when I became Catholic was my supervisor at work. I gave him a rosary that was blessed at the Vatican or whatever. I thought he'd think it's cool, whatever. He's like, you know what? I've never even wore a rosary, and he's like putting it on or whatever. He was like Catholic as far as Catholic can be. You know what I'm saying? Like Molly's dad or something. Like, so like the rosary never really like played a role in his like Catholic life, and it doesn't have to. It's just another like tool to help you meditate, to help you pray, help you think about people, and help you.
My dad told me you're not supposed to ever wear them. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't think you are supposed.
You're not supposed to. I mean, it's not jewelry. It's just basically a way to, because there's like a whole thing. You start with the cross, and then you say Our Father, and then the next one.
So what if you do it wrong?
You know what at the end of the day, to be honest,
I messed
straight
up.
to jail.
Yeah, you're going to hell. You did it wrong.
It's just basically a way to meditate. There's like the mysteries of Jesus.
But it's like numerical. Like you hold each bead as you say the prayer, and you have to do it so many times. And then there's like
forces. It kind of just it forces you to go through the prayer a certain amount of time, spend the time, put in the time is really what it does. It's an aid to help you put in the time. And I would say like a lot of like the statuary and the stained glass, it's this still like medieval like leftovers from when people can't read. They didn't know, they want a prop, something to show them while they're sitting there. I'm sure Mass was like 8 hours long back in like medieval times. So it's like things were different then. Like, and it's still there, but nobody's worshiping statues in the Catholic Church. And if they are, they're doing it wrong. We don't do that.
Yeah, like any art, I guess, it's there for inspiration and beauty and stuff. But like moving to Michigan and finding out that Amish people are real, looking at your hat.
Hey, look at this hat. I'm telling you, this is authentic Amish.
I know. They sell them at the store that I go to, but I would feel embarrassed to buy one because they know that I'm a heathen. So most
of the dresses I wear are Amish or Mennonite dresses.
Oh, are they?
Very close. And I actually, to be honest, it's interesting that you said that, because living close to these Amish and Mennonite communities, and they're all different ones. There's like the old order ones that are like off grid, no electricity. And then I have Mennonite people that I know that have electricity, and they're kind of like more modernized. But they taught me a lot about modesty. And I was like, eesh, I was like not the most modest person at all.
Let's put those pictures back up.
And so, but I realized, they kind of taught me about their kind of philosophy, why they wear these bonnets and why they wear these dresses and why they do this and why they do that. And I was really like, that's really beautiful, because I saw how they lived their life. And I was like, I know a couple of families, and I was like, they are so content, and they have problems too, obviously, but they're just living these lives on these little compounds, and they don't have the kids are playing ball outside, the husbands are in the field, the wives are taking care of the kids and cooking and doing everything. And they're in this whole little like community outside of the world, without all the craziness. And they're so content and like just living life.
I like the way that they do church, that it's so simplistic, and that this weekend we're going to your house and bringing food, and next week you're coming to my house. And I I just, that community part of it, I just feel like God is for everyone,
Yeah.
and it's
You're not wrong about that at all.
and whereas like where I was going was like, you know, oh, well, you were baptized, but do you have proof? And you've got to get a notary. And it's just like, God doesn't need a fucking notary, dude.
Yeah, that's silly. Like, I don't know what they were doing to you. They're like, they probably just didn't like you. And that's
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess to catch the chat up, you know, my dad is 91 and he's not going to be here for 1,000 years. So he would like me to get confirmed in the Catholic faith. And, you know, I obviously have a lot of questions about every facet of life.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, you know, is that Satan stepping in, or is that just, you know, like some places are different than others or whatever. But I have been met with a lot of red tape, which is just interesting
Well,
coming
that's a
from.
form of, that could be a form of spiritual warfare. Like when you're on the right path,
Could also
you
just
know.
be assholes is what it could be. But, you know, it's, you know, I understand like not giving, especially knowing what the host is, not just, you know, like leaving a basket of it on the sidewalk for anybody that walks by. I get that. But it's also just like gatekeeping God, like from your like God broker. Like this priest is like, he's cooler than you. It's like, no, we're all God's children, and like we should just all be like super welcoming to each other. Now, I say that as if I'm some kind of hippie. Don't come find me on Matt's Instagram where I'm telling little girls to fuck themselves, because that's also me.
Well, remember what I was telling you. There's, at the end of the day, your baptism, if you can't find records of it, a priest will, you know, if it's the right priest, will tell you that they say they can baptize you again and say, if you haven't been baptized, I'm baptizing you now.
Yeah, that's what the Los Angeles Diocese said. But Lansing, Michigan says,
go to a
go get a
different
notary.
before you yeah, just go to like a regular Catholic, not
Go to a
not
different
the
place.
Latin mass.
Yeah.
Go to Latin. That's like the elite
But
God.
see,
Like,
here's the thing though, like I am not a loophole person. I don't want to find a workaround to like get around. Like
that's not a
if,
workaround. They're
That's not
creating
working
an
on it. Just,
they're creating an unnecessary hurdle, and they're, you know, I
no,
don't
that's
know.
not a loop. That's not a loophole. It's the people who are there are just doing it that way. Because
Yeah.
I've been to a few different parishes, like they're very like, oh, just, you know, send it over, and if not, if you can't find it, then we'll handle that. You know, like, so some people are really practical about it because they're like, well, yeah, you want to be Catholic, you went through the classes, we're not going to just deny you, you know. So you're
Yeah.
not going to be denied regardless.
I don't know. It wouldn't be the first time I wasn't cool enough for whatever the hell I wanted to do. So
I've never been cool.
Matt was always cool.
I ain't gonna say shit. No.
You guys, just like, thank you so much for being like patient with me. I know that I'm just such a flawed pile of garbage, and you guys are just really awesome.
You're amazing. You are, I'm going to use a little bit of profanity here, but you're a badass. Okay.
That's not even that profane. I have
Molly's fun. Molly's fun.
20 bad words in my head.
I'm just saying, like, I've never met anyone. I was shocked. And let me tell you, both of you, I've been feeling very isolated. And I was like, you know, I've been very nostalgic. I was like, gosh, I wonder what happened to these people I used to hang out with, or just people I kind of knew. You know, everybody's older now, so obviously I'm sure some people are probably still there at the clubs, who knows? And some people have left and moved on, and I'm always curious, like, what happened? And the one thing I thought about was, well, they're probably, you know, maybe a certain type of person or something, and they probably wouldn't get along with me or whatever. And so just coming across, meeting people who are just normal and not crazy is like such a breath of fresh air, that I have something in common with, you know, besides just religion. So
Yeah,
I
it's
think
hard.
that's really cool.
No, I think
Yeah,
it's,
we're like old assholes now. I made this coat like a million years ago. I thought Maddie would remember it, but he doesn't.
I was too
But
busy focusing on myself, probably.
Do you know how to sew, Molly?
yeah, it used to close over my fat fucking tits. Now I feel like fat man in a tiny coat, whatever. Whatever. I still have it though. It's like 20 something years later. This is a good one.
You
Though.
look cool. You look cool, and I have a black bonnet.
I love your black bonnet. Listen, if they like turned around or if they sold them on eBay and I had a fake name, like I would totally buy one because I think they're
Dude, I have a thrift store over here that I score these for like super cheap. I can get you bonnets. I can get you anything you want. Seriously.
They're like where I go get my milk every weekend, but I feel like it would be.
Ask them, Molly. They need money, okay?
No, like Maddie, when I moved and I bought this house and I had all the shit and whatever, like I give them everything. They are my thrift store. They have a little thrift store.
Okay.
I give them all my stuff because they're a better charity than Goodwill. I just like, and I'll buy anything from them. Like, oh, a spatula, oh, a coffee maker, oh, this, whatever. Like I'll buy, but like their religious stuff, like I just kind of feel like I don't
think they think of it that way. I think they're cool with it. They don't like Catholics though.
Oh, really? Yeah, I just feel like, okay, so I'm going to wear that with like a punk rock coat with my tits out. And
they won't care. Like, they don't care. They don't. Like, we got so many, like Lancaster County, Pennsylvania is nothing but Amish. They don't care. And then the Mennonites, they mix in. You could get the bonnet. Just ask them for the bonnet. Say, I want one of those dresses with all the buttons or whatever. Have them make it for you and pay them. They need the money.
Oh, no, I gave them a lot of fabric. I gave them a ton of fabric and quilting stuff. I know where they are. They're on the top shelf. I've looked at them, but I was just like,
no, buy it.
No,
they're actually, honestly, Molly, if you know how to sew, you could have a big business if you have time. Because every time I make these little get ready with me videos, I wear Amish dresses, and people are like, some people love it, and some people are like, what is going on here? Why is she dressed like that? I never dress like that. Oh, it's the Handmaid's Tale. What's going on with this girl? And I was just like, this is just a cool, handmade dress,
Yeah.
I love them. They have the poofy sleeves and everything.
Matt knows how long it takes to sew shit. It takes forever.
We used to sew all our own clothes. I sewed all my stuff.
And it took me forever. And then I would still glue half of it to my tits and call poison control on the way to the club. Oh, there's bouncing boobs in the chat. Thank you, moderator. Well, I don't know. I mean, this obviously was a super hot topic, guys. And like, dude, you guys in the chat have been so freaking patient. I appreciate it. And if you want to give your girl any kind of help or just tell me I'm an asshole, I am mollysleuth@gmail.com. And Nora, how do people find you?
You can find me at Nora Breanne on YouTube. And then it's Nora.Breanne on Instagram. And then I think it's Nora Breanne on TikTok and Facebook and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're kind of a big deal.
I don't really like having all the other socials, but I mostly just do YouTube. I didn't really plan on having all these things. It just kind of popped up because I made a video talking about a bad experience, and I guess it went semi-viral. And so many people like wanted me to talk about this stuff more. So.
I need to know more about that.
Yeah, I got bad experiences.
And also, I think at least on YouTube and Rumble, I've put your YouTube in the description. And then, Maddie, where do people find you?
Been canceled. I don't know. Instagram. Just Instagram is where you find me.
We should do an AI show.
I still think that we should talk about St. Clair real quick.
Okay.
She's the patron saint of television.
Oh.
I'm not going to get into the details of it.
When you sent me that, I thought you were kidding. So explain it.
So this was like a kind of a gimmicky little, like if you went to Wacko Toys or whatever, like in Hollywood, you could buy these things. But no, St. Clair is legit the patron saint of television. And it's been also now the patron saint of computer screens. And I sent you guys that prayer, and I think it's
Yeah.
important. Autumn, when anytime my wife, she writes, she'll do stuff with television in mind or movies in mind. And I think it's important with all the BS that we're subjected to. It would be nice to know someone somewhere is actually looking out for humanity when they're creating movies and when they're creating television and content on the internet. And I know we're all guilty of not doing it. Nora's doing a good job doing it. I try to evangelize as much as I can without being overbearing, because I feel like that's not the way to go either. But so she, in I guess 1958, was proclaimed the patron saint of television.
Wow.
And then I had that prayer I sent you guys. Do you want to read it? Or do you want me to read it?
You read it.
All right, I'll read it. So this is a prayer to St. Clare of Assisi. Gracious St. Clare, we turn to you for your intercession for those who work in television. Pray, dear Saint, that we are moral, produce television shows and movies that are uplifting and life-giving, and that they provide entertainment that is beneficial to those who are watching. Television has great influence on society, and we ask you to plead before the Lord that anyone who is in the television industry realizes the influence and impact of their work, and that they work toward providing shows and movies that are both entertaining and ethical. Amen.
Amen.
And that was written by an Anne Fitch. And it was
in 1958.
I don't know when that was written. It came off an old website called Practical Prayers, but she was made the patron saint of television in 1958. So they were, it sounds so stupid, right? But like, you got to think, like, with social media, this has been really the ruin of our society. I feel like. So anything we could pray that people put content out there that's a little bit better than a million selfies of your own face. Or like, knockout videos or whatever, like pranks and all the other mess that we are addicted to watching all the time. I don't know. I like the idea of it. I think it's cool, and I felt like we should share that on this episode of the Molly Sleuth.
It does make me feel like, God, from 1958 to now, we just have this like endless stream of pornography and like, 20 hot singles on an island. Who's gonna fuck who? And like, dude, like, it's just like, where have we gotten since like 1958? We are just like so lost. And
did you hear about the Catholic Church had, I forget the details of it, but they had something with the film industry where they had to abide by a certain moral code. And that's when all those like golden age of movies came out. Because there was movies coming out in the 20s and 30s that were immoral.
Yeah.
And so they stepped in and were like, no, we have to clean this up. And so there was this like certain type of thing that was around. So it's probably around that time.
It's still around, like PG and R-rated and XXX and stuff. That all spurs from that.
Yeah. Okay. I found that really interesting.
And the comic books had it too. There was like approved by the comic code where there's a certain moral, and I don't know if there's still the comic book one or not, but yeah, there was once a
random fucking He-Man. The mods have lost it.
There was definitely someone was trying to like, be mindful of polluting people's minds, whereas now they're just mindful of like, how much money can I make and get the most views or go viral or go whatever.
I don't even want to go there.
And I think we're all, I know I'm guilty. I'm like guilty of like not producing the best quality merchandise. You know what I mean? But I digress.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we could all do a lot better in this world. I'm doing my very little best with what I got. So
you're doing a good job, Molly.
Yeah, you are.
All right, well, thanks. I love you guys, and we'll figure something out. And everybody, mollysleuth@gmail.com, if you want to tell me to fuck myself or where I have gone wrong, or you want to send fan mail to Nora, I'll pretend that it's for me. and fill my little ego. Or fan mail. Yeah, there we go. There's that GIF that I love so much. It really just embodies me. Nothing is better. Oh, Rod. Happy early birthday, Rod. Just a couple hours to go. All right, guys. Well, thanks everybody for sticking with it. And I will see you guys next Friday with a special little treat. But Matt, Nora, I hope you guys come back. We can talk shit about something else.
This was really fun.
Okay. All right, guys. Love you guys. See you on the interwebs.